Thanks for watching Endgame Economics. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe. It's completely free for you, and it helps us continue making more videos like this.
In early 2024, Senegal looked like the star pupil of West Africa. The country had just pulled off a genuinely rare feat in the region, a peaceful, democratic transfer of power. Paired with a projected GDP growth of 6.7%, it appeared perfectly stable and ready to thrive. That growth was largely driven by a massive discovery sitting just off the Atlantic coast. Brand new offshore oil and gas developments, like the Sangomar field, were coming online, pumping out tens of thousands of barrels of crude a day. On paper, Senegal stood on the brink of immense, resource-driven wealth. Then, the newly elected government performed some routine housekeeping. President Bassirou Diomaye Faye ordered an audit of the previous administration's books. When the accountants returned, the room went entirely quiet. The financial numbers that investors and international monitors had been relying on were a complete lie. Through mundane bureaucratic tricks, the previous government had quietly concealed around $7 billion. They used undisclosed project loans, extra budgetary spending, and domestic bank credit lines to borrow massive sums without ever logging them into the official fiscal framework. Senegal's official debt violently expanded, from 74% to nearly 119% of GDP, plunging its credit rating into junk territory. As this budget breakdown shows, offshore oil can't fix it. By law, 2025 hydrocarbon revenues are strictly ring-fenced, accounting for a mere 1.5%. The supposed treasure chest is, right now, just a rounding error. The roaring success story foreign investors bought into was an accounting mirage. With the government heavily in debt and oil revenues restricted, we have to look past the spreadsheets to understand how the majority of the Senegalese population actually survives. Away from the offshore rigs, agriculture employs a massive portion of the workforce. For the better part of a century, the physical soil of the country was engineered by French colonial rulers to serve as a supply depot for one specific export, the peanut. Relying heavily on a single crop creates extreme vulnerability. A bad rainy season or a sudden slump in European market prices translates immediately into lost wages and empty tables. Millions of livelihoods swing violently on weather patterns and foreign commodity markets that the farmers cannot control. Because the dry savanna could never guarantee absolute security, generations of Senegalese workers historically looked past the soil. They turned to the ocean, relying on the Atlantic coast as their ultimate dependable safety net. For coastal communities, fishing is absolute food security and cultural identity combined. Fleets of brilliantly painted wooden pirogues historically pulled in massive hauls of sardines, building an abundance machine that peaked in the 1990s at over 1 million tons of fish caught per year. Today, those waters are being systematically emptied. Industrial trawlers from Europe and China have arrived in force, operating under access agreements. These massive, distant water fleets can vacuum up in a matter of days what a local pirogue crew might catch in an entire season. The math on the beach is brutal. The catch vanishes, boat-owning families can no longer pay their crews, and suddenly tens of thousands of skilled young men who know how to navigate open water have absolutely no fish left to catch. Left with seaworthy boats and zero domestic prospects, they point their pirogues north. Unemployed fishermen are repurposing their traditional vessels to navigate the deadly Atlantic migration routes toward the Canary Islands and Europe. The human cost of this migration is staggering. In 2024 alone, over 10,000 people died trying to reach European shores from Africa, with around 2,000 perishing specifically on the Senegal and Gambia routes. These casualties are the direct consequence of abstract international trade policies. Decisions made in foreign capitals about fishing access translate directly into vanished local survival, forcing thousands to risk their lives on the open ocean. Millions of individual acts of love and obligation now represent the largest river of foreign currency into Senegal. These remittances from the diaspora have overtaken official development assistance and traditional export sectors, reaching over 2.2 trillion CFA francs in 2024. This cash flow acts with a counter-cyclical magic. When domestic fishing fails or inflation spikes, the diaspora tends to send more money, not less. It is a highly stable, recession-proof income stream that now accounts for 11% of the entire economy. To protect the value of that remitted cash, Senegal uses the West African CFA franc. Because this currency is strictly pegged to the euro, it keeps local inflation incredibly low, around 2%, ensuring that the money sent home by a nurse in New York or a driver in Paris retains its purchasing power. That stability comes with a severe trade-off. Outsourcing monetary policy to the European Central Bank means Senegal cannot adjust its own interest rates or devalue its money to boost exports. For many citizens, this colonial-era arrangement fuels a politically radioactive hunger for true national control. That hunger defined the 2024 election. President Bassirou Diomaye Faye and his powerful Prime Minister, Ousmane Sonko, swept into office on a unified, sweeping mandate of radical economic sovereignty, promising to end foreign dependency entirely. But the $7 billion hidden debt cratered those plans. When the International Monetary Fund urged Senegal to restructure its debt to avoid default, Sonko flatly refused. He publicly branded restructuring a national disgrace, choosing domestic pride over foreign financial terms. This line graph maps out the immediate market retaliation. The moment the Prime Minister rejected the IMF, international bondholders panicked. Senegal's sovereign bonds collapsed to roughly 50 cents on the dollar as investors aggressively punished the country for defying the global financial system. Facing financial ruin, President Faye executed a drastic countermeasure. In May 2020, Sonko and appointed a technocratic former central banker as Sonko's party immediately flexed their parliamentary majority to elect him as the head of the National Assembly. The man Faye fired is now perfectly positioned to legislatively block any attempts to accept IMF reform conditions. This spectacular political stalemate has trapped the entire Senegalese economy. The government is caught in a vice between the cold, mathematical demands of global finance and the unyielding pride of domestic sovereignty. Every percentage point of trust the previous government burned by hiding the debt is now being bought back by the current one at brutal interest rates. Lying proved to be the most expensive economic policy in Senegal's history. But the clock is ticking on an even larger issue. Senegal has a booming, deeply young population. Economists call this a demographic dividend, but that energy only pays out if the state can generate formal jobs faster than it generates new job seekers. A stable currency and future oil projections mean nothing if the economy cannot absorb its own people. Without massive domestic job creation, Senegal's greatest economic asset will continue to look past the empty fishing grounds, climb into wooden piragues, and simply sail away.